All right, everybody, welcome back to the Kings of the Queen City podcast. It's been a while, but we were all finishing up school and we've all been busy with work. As per usual, I'm Zach and I am joined here today by Matt. And today it's not going to be too long of an episode, but since the NHL Expansion Draft is coming up with the Seattle Kraken, we both decided to put down our listings as to who we think is going to be chosen from each team. Over the last few days, there have been some deals and some signings that are all but confirmed, and we're just waiting for them to be selected tonight during the draft. But today, Matt and I are going to go over some of the picks that aren't confirmed and who we think might be chosen by those teams. And we're also going to cover some of the picks that have been chosen and our opinions on those. So without further ado, Matt, if you want to kick us off.
Sure. So it's actually 12:46 right now on Expansion Draft Day. We've had a really large number of teams have their picks leaked to this point. So to start, we'll just go over the teams that haven't had their confirmed picks yet. It's not a very long list. And we'll go over who we think that those picks will be, and we'll go in alphabetical order. So we'll start with the Buffalo Sabres, our team. Zach, who do you think they're going to take?
So I've been looking at some of the different websites and some of the different journalists that have been, putting their drafts together and who they think is going to be chosen. So I've been seeing a lot of different people putting three different names, and I think it's pretty much between Borgen, Colin Miller, and Tokarski at this point, it looks like. I personally have them picking Colin Miller. I think that even though Borgen is looking pretty promising, I think if they're going to be a new team coming into the league, they're going to want some stability right away, and I think Miller can provide that with them. I know his contract's a little larger, but from what we were talking about before we started the episode, it kind of sounds like with all the picks that are predicted right now, it seems like they have a little bit of cap room to work with, so they're not too worried about that. So that's why I went with Miller.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's it comes down to basically two names, but there is a third name for me as well. If you would have asked me last night before all these picks got leaked, I probably would have said, Borgen. But the fact that Seattle's leaked picks, there's been so many that are defensemen to this point already. It's hard for me to see them taking Will Borgen, because if they do select Will Borgen, he does have to go on waivers, and then Buffalo would get first claim on him again. I'm sure they would absolutely claim him back. They don't want to lose him. So for me, it's Borgen. Same with Colin Miller. I think that if Colin Miller does get selected by the Kraken, I wouldn't expect him to play much at all. Based on who they have already, I think that he would probably be their seventh defenseman. He might even get sent down to their new AHL affiliate, which I believe is in the south somewhere, southeast. I think it's in Charlotte, but I'm not sure. And then, I've heard Justin Tokarski, they are going to need an AHL goaltender, but there was a goaltender that was picked already that's confirmed that could be their AHL guy. I don't know yet. But the other name for me that's different from you would probably be Zemgus Girgensons. He does have a pretty high cap hit. He was injured with the Sabres this year all year, but he is a good penalty killing centerman. He could be an extra forward for them if they need be, or fourth line center. While Girgensons hasn't lived up to the first round expectations that he had when he was drafted by the Sabres, I do think he is a pretty serviceable bottom six centerman that the Kraken would take a look at. So next on the list would be Chicago. Sounds like they're getting pretty close to having their pick confirmed. It probably will happen right when we're talking about them here that we get the confirmed pick, but Chicago's exposed list is pretty short. So Zach, I'm interested to hear who you think. And remember, I did just see a leak that said the pick is going to be quite off the board, not one that you would expect.
Okay, so I mean, obviously, I've been trying to follow Chicago a little more this year as well. Looking at a lot of their players, I was having a hard time trying to find a pick that would kind of fit into the rest of the list to make sure that there wouldn't be any like wrongdoings in my list or picking or anything. So I have them taking forward Ryan Carpenter. Out of their exposed list, he was really the only one that I looked at where it's like kind of like, okay, well, he's not old. He's not really washed up, I don't think. He doesn't have that big of a, I don't even think he has like a big cap hit at all. I think he's in the thousands rather than in the millions.
Ryan Carpenter is a million.
Okay, so exactly a million. So he out of most of their exposed list, he had a low cap hit relatively, and he wasn't a free agent, so he wouldn't have to get signed to a bigger deal. I mean, I could be totally wrong on that because they could just pick a free agent and negotiate an even smaller deal to not have to worry about the cap hit. But for me, I have them taking Carpenter.
Okay. For me, there's a couple names here that I think would be a good fit. First one that comes to mind is Nikita Zadorov, but I have heard in the last 20 minutes that doesn't seem to be the case, that Zadorov is probably going to be going in a different direction. And then you're looking at a guy like Vinny Hinostroza, who I've liked all his career. He's 27 years old. He's a winger. He's a pretty good bottom six guy. He's responsible. He's pretty sound defensively and so on. And then another interesting pick, which would be Adam Gaudette, 24-year-old centerman. Really hasn't come into his own yet, but he's starting to get there. And he is an RFA, so the Kraken would get a first chance at making a new contract with him and getting that deal done. But if I have to go off of what I've been hearing of off the board pick, a lot of these names I could really see going to Seattle, except for one that really sticks out, and that's Anton Lindholm, the defenseman. He is a UFA this year, and he's 26 years old. So if I had to guess at a pick that would be off the board, for me, that would be him. Next up, unconfirmed at this point, is the Detroit Red Wings. So, Zach, what are you thinking there?
So I have them taking Svechnikov. I think the way he's played in the last couple years has been eye-opening for a lot of teams. And I think that he would provide not just a lot of skill, but he would provide some goal-scoring threat as well, especially to a new team that, like I said, they're going to be looking for stability. They're going to be looking to score goals right off the rip and get some momentum going so that way they don't fall into a hole too quickly. And I think that he'd be a decent pick for them.
Okay. Yeah, Evgeny Svechnikov is 24 years old. He's brothers with Andrei Svechnikov, obviously. Not the same skill level as Andrei, but still, I think he's a good forward. I don't really see him becoming a 20 goal scorer, but definitely could be a serviceable middle six guy if you want him in your lineup. He's still got a lot of room to grow, and he is an RFA this year, so he's up for a new contract. He was making $870,000, so I wouldn't expect much of a raise, if anything, for Svechnikov. For me, I think this one's a pretty obvious choice if I'm Ron Francis of the Seattle Kraken. I'm going with Troy Stretcher. 27-year-old right shot defenseman, could be your extra, but he's got 1 year left on his deal at 1.7. Stretcher's been a really good defenseman everywhere that he's played. He's not really a guy that's going to produce high offensively, but he's pretty sound responsibly, does his job, knows his role. And for me, that would be my pick. If they decide to go with a forward from Detroit, which could be the case considering that they have 14 defensemen already picked in the confirmed picks, or at least 10 of those 14 have been confirmed. The 14 is just an overall reaching number. But I could see somebody like Dominic Turgeon possibly getting picked. He's a good prospect for the Red Wings that they were okay with losing. And then maybe even if they go with a real reach here and go with Bobby Ryan, who's the UFA this year. He was on a $1,000 contract. He's 34 years old. Probably would only be a 1 or 2 year deal. Probably a little bit cheaper than $1,000. But Bobby Ryan still scores goals, and that's what the Kraken are going to need. They're going to need somebody that can put the puck in the net for them, because they're going to have a lot of young guys that are just coming in the league. They're not really familiar with goal scoring yet. They're going to be playing their roles and worried more about defensively minded game than offensive. So Next team that we don't have confirmed, we're going way down the list here to Philadelphia. So, Zach, what are you thinking on Philadelphia?
So for Philly, I was looking at it. They had a few decent guys actually exposed when I was looking at the list last night. But for me, I see them taking James Van Riemsdyk. He's been in the league for a while. He's got a lot of good experience. And I was looking at his stats from last year, and he was, I think, in the top 5 scoring for them for Philly, maybe even top 3. So he was producing pretty well. Unfortunately, Philly did miss the playoffs, but they were playing pretty good at the start of the year. And so for me, I mean, if Philly looks like they're okay with losing a guy that was putting up pretty good numbers for them last year, despite them missing the playoffs, then I don't really see why Seattle wouldn't choose them, especially when he's got that experience in the league and he knows what it takes to get to the playoffs as well. So,
right. Yeah, JVR is definitely a guy that I do like. The only thing that I don't like about JVR is that cap at $7 million. That's the real kick in the knackers, I guess you could say. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Seattle had interest in JVR. And I can't say for sure about any of this or not, but if I wanted JVR that badly and I'm Seattle, I wouldn't be taking him in the expansion draft. I'd take a prospect and I'd make a side deal, throw a pick or whatever at Philadelphia, retain half the salary, 3.5 for 2 more years, and take JVR. But JVR, like I said, he's a guy that I do. I like watching him play. He's smart. He's a very two-way player, and his biggest asset has got to be his rebounds. I know it's not much to say, but watching him 8 times this year against the Sabres in the COVID divisions, I can, I think I could count more than 10 times, on my hand that JVR scored a rebound against the Buffalo Sabres this year. That, he's just a puck hound and he's good in front of the net. So I think that would be a good pickup for them. If I'm picking for Seattle, if you would have asked me even this morning, I probably would have said Justin Braun on defense. He's got 1 year left on his deal, but honestly, with who they have on defense now, it's hard to say that they're going to pick any more defensemen. They're probably going to be going a little bit more towards the forward side. I wouldn't be shocked to see them take a chance at Jacob Voracek, who was left unexposed. He's a right winger making 8.25. I could see a side deal in there to retain some salary maybe. But he's got 3 years left on his deal. He'll be 34 when that's up. They really don't have, they've got a lot of room to play with right now with their confirmed picks. They're not even close to the cap ceiling right now. They got almost $20 million to play with. So I could see them taking a chance on a bigger contract like that. And if they don't, I could see him going with Samuel Morin. He's a 26-year-old left winger. He is UFA this year, so he's going to need a new contract. I haven't heard anything about any type of contract negotiations going on already. But either way, I do like Samuel Morin's game. I think that he's a really hard grinder type of player, and I think he would fit in the Seattle's mold a little bit. Later when we get to the list of names that we have confirmed, to me, this team comes across as a team that's going to be quite the grinding team. They're going to be pretty physical, pretty, just hardworking all around, pucks in the corners. They're going to win all those battles. So I could see Sam Morin being a good piece for that. Next on the list, we have 2 teams left that haven't been confirmed yet. Technically 3. I guess we'll go to Tampa Bay, even though we've all but had confirmation. The rumors are out there. It's pretty much all said and done. It just has not been 100% confirmed yet. I'll tell you, it's expected to be Yanni Gord, which doesn't come as a surprise to anybody. He's one of the younger players they'll have to expose. He's a centerman making 5.16. Pretty good player. Probably can get you about 20 goals, maybe 50 points if he's, having a really good year. I could definitely see him being their second line center. and maybe even first, depending on what happens with trades, signings, all that. And then he'll help create a cushion when they draft Matty Beniers out of Michigan, who's the centerman, and he's got a year to go back to college probably, and he can step in behind Yanni Gord after that because Gord is under contract till 2025. But Zach, who are you thinking if it's not Yanni Gord?
So yeah, I mean, I had Yanni Gord down on my list. Listening to WGR, I mean, sometimes they spit a lot of shit out that doesn't really make any sense. But they were talking about how he's been pretty productive for Tampa Bay over the last few years. Still relatively young, and like you said, he can be that productive centerman that the team like Seattle might need. But if they don't take Gord, then I feel like they're probably going to take Tyler Johnson. I mean, other than Gord, he's really the only other forward. I mean, how old is Palat?
Palat is, I believe, 31. Let me take a look real quick.
So, I mean, like, he's a little older. They could go with Palat too, but I feel like it would be more sensible for them to go with Johnson instead. I don't remember who had the higher cap hit.
So Palat and Johnson are both 30 years old. Palat is making 5.3, and Tyler Johnson is at an even $5 million. The only thing is Palat's contract only has 1 year left on it, while Tyler Johnson is under contract for until 2024.
Okay, so well, in that case, then I guess maybe Palat would be a more likely pick, just so then they could see what he's capable of for another year, and then if they like it, they could re-sign him. If they don't like it, well, they could just find a replacement then.
Right.
But for me, if I was undecided, it's probably between Palat or Johnson if they don't take Gord.
Okay. For me, I think that they're going to try and steer clear of the high cap hits, and they've already proven that they're doing that, passing on Tarasenko, Price, Landeskog, all these other guys. If it's not Yanni Gord, which, like I said, it's about a 98% chance right now that it is. I would have been shocked if they didn't go with Blake Coleman. The only thing is I have not heard anything about Blake Coleman and the Kraken talking about an extension because he is a pending UFA. So I kind of have to rule him out in this scenario. But I would definitely see them going after Mitchell Stevens if it's not Yanni Gord. Stevens is a 24-year-old center making $735,000. He's an RFA with 1 year left on his deal. He's another guy that I don't know he would make the opening night roster, but he would definitely be a guy that can play bottom six role, could switch to the wing if he had to. He's a pretty good grinder. Just didn't, when you have a team like Tampa Bay and how deep they are, you look at a guy like Mitchell Stevens and you say, well, he hasn't made the lineup. He can't be that good. Well, that's not necessarily the case. They're just so deep, they don't have room for him. So I think Mitchell Stevens is a good prospect for them, 24 years old. I think that, other teams would be willing to take that chance on him. And I think Kraken building their team the way they are would be a good fit for Stevens. The last two we have are Vancouver and Washington without any exposed picks so far. Zach, what are you thinking?
From Vancouver, I think they're going to take Matthew Highmore. I don't know too much about him, but I feel like he could fit into their bottom six relatively nicely. I was looking at the score. They have him listed as a center, but it looks like he can play as a winger as well. So, that could be some nice versatility that they could use. And I mean, if they don't have room for him, then he could be a decent minors player. So.
Okay. Yeah, for myself, I think that this one, this is where it gets interesting for me. This isn't my first choice. This isn't who I think they're going to take. But if you're looking for a forward off of Vancouver, I do like Sven Berchi, 28 years old, left winger. He is UFA, so he's up for a new contract. He was making 3.36. I would expect it to be around the same ballpark area in contract negotiations. There's also Jake Virtanen, who they could look at. But other than those two, who I really think the Kraken are going to take, and this might be a little bit of a shocker, is Braden Holtby. Holtby's got 1 year left on his deal at 4.3, and they already have a goaltender selected, who's expected to be their starter. So with them taking Holtby, I don't expect Holtby to be a Kraken for very long, if you know what I mean. So if they do go with Braden Holtby, I have heard things about, Seattle possibly taking players and flipping them, and especially with the goaltending, we've heard that about Seattle. So I would say at a 4.3 cap hit, if they take Braden Holtby and they retain half that salary, say it's around 2.65 cap hit for another team, I could definitely see a team, giving them a good trade for Braden Holtby 1 year at 31 years old, and then maybe building a contract off of there 2-3 years before he retires.
And yeah, now that I'm looking back at my list, so obviously we went over some of the confirmations before we started the episode. A lot of the teams that I had also taking a goalie have now changed to picks that you've confirmed to me.
Yes.
So, with you thinking them possibly taking Holtby now, and obviously a lot of the teams that are confirmed are not confirmed with a goalie, aside from Florida, really. So I can even see them possibly taking Subban from Chicago as a backup as well.
Yeah, I could see that. The only thing is with them saying it's not an expected pick. Subban was a part of the Vegas Golden Knights. So I don't know that they are going to go that route again with Malcolm Subban, but it's definitely a possibility. I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen, but I do think that it's going to be a bit even more off the board than that.
Right. But coming back then to Vancouver, I could see them also taking Holtby if it's not a forward, like you said.
Yeah. Holtby just, it didn't work out with Vancouver. They didn't have the season they were hoping to have after adding Braden Holtby. They have a really good roster in my mind, and they were kind of missing that goaltending. And they had Thatcher Demko, but there were some concerns about whether or not that he was going to be able to handle that starting role or not. And they went out and they got Braden Holtby, and it just hasn't worked out to this point. So I could definitely see a change of scenery. Good for Vancouver, gets a goaltender off the books, frees them up to go get one in free agency or a trade. And then Seattle would benefit by retaining a little bit of salary, and it's really not a big cap hit. It would be about just over $2 million. They have that type of money to play with. Flip him for a draft pick or player or prospect, whatever the case may be. And the last team that we haven't had a confirmed pick from is the Washington Capitals. Zach, what are you thinking? And don't say Ovi. It's not happening.
No, I'm not gonna say Ovi. I think they're gonna take Connor Sherry. He has a relatively low cap hit. I think it said it was either 7 something or 9 something, I think.
Yeah, he's at a $700,000 range.
Yeah, so a low contract. I don't know how much longer he's on that deal for.
He has 2 years left.
Okay, so a low contract. Personally, I think when he gets the right line around him, I think he can be a pretty good forward. He showed his ability. I think we saw some glimpses of his ability when he was on Buffalo. We've seen some of it when he was with Pittsburgh, and now I don't think he had the worst of seasons with Washington either.
No. So not terrible, but definitely lower than people thought he would have.
Right. So I mean, I think he could have somewhat of a bounce back year. I think he'd be a decent, maybe like, I don't know, third line forward probably. But I mean, for the cap hit and for what's known of his ability, I feel like he would be a pretty decent pick coming from Washington.
Yeah, I agree with that. If they're looking for forwards out of Washington, I could definitely see Connor Sherry being one of the 2 picks that I would make. The other one would be Garnet Hathaway, 29-year-old left winger who's got 2 years left on his deal at 1.5. If they decide to go defenseman, which looks increasingly like it won't be the case, I would say Brendan Dillon, 30-year-old left defenseman. He's got 3 years left at 3.9. I don't know if they want that cap hit for declining defenseman and Dillon. But if it was my pick and my choice on Seattle from Washington, I have heard a few rumors about this as well. I'm going with Vitek Vanacek, and that the 25-year-old goaltender. They have a lot of goalies in their system right now. They can't protect them all. So Phoenix Copley and Vitek Vanacek got exposed. Vanacek is the better of the two goaltenders that are younger. Craig Anderson's also on there, but he's 40 years old, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him retire. And even if he doesn't, I don't see Seattle taking a chance on him. But Vanacek played a lot this year for the Capitals, and he played pretty well. And he's an RFA with 1 year left on his deal. He's only making $716,000. I could see him easily being the backup for Seattle and playing, about 20, 30 games this year. So we will jump back to the top of the list, going in alphabetical, and we'll run through the confirmed picks, I guess. And do you want to add anything to that, or just go through the confirms?
I'm good with just rolling through it.
Okay, perfect. Well, let me just make sure. Let me check my feed here, make sure that there are no other confirmed picks that went through so far. No, looks like we're pretty good here.
All right.
So we're still waiting on 6 teams. Okay. That's it. 25 teams have had their picks confirmed. So they're going to start putting their roster together really soon here. But let's start with Anaheim. First pick that Seattle is going to make. It's going to be Hayden Fleury, 25-year-old defenseman. He can play left or right. $1.3 million cap hit. He's under contract for 1 more year, and then he has RFA rights after that, so they will be able to hold on to him. Arizona, Tyler Pitlick. I really like this pick. I really like Tyler Pitlick as a player. He is a great bottom 6 player to have in your lineup. He can kill penalties. He's very smart. He's quite the grinder. And he's another one that's got 1 year left on his deal, 29 years old with a 1.75 cap hit. He is a UFA at the end of this, but if they lose him, not a big deal. If they keep him for a couple more years, awesome. Boston. I'm not going to lie, Boston's pick came as a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought I was going to see them take Nick Ritchie or Chris Wagner, maybe even Sean Corrali. And even on defense, you had Connor Clifton sitting there at 26 years old, but they decided to go with the younger defenseman in Jeremy Lauzon. 24, he can play either side, $850,000 cap hit, and he has 1 year left on his deal with RFA status after that. So it's a little bit of a trend developing with Seattle. They're going with younger guys who have a little bit of term on their deal, but they also are going with guys that have RFA rights, so they can control and decide, okay, do we want to trade them at the end of the contract? Okay, we're not going to lose them to free agency. We can trade their rights or get a new contract done. Give me 1 second. We just had another pick come in.
All right.
And it is Chicago, so we haven't passed it yet.
All right. We'll get to that when it comes then.
Buffalo's unconfirmed. Calgary, not a surprise here at all in my mind. Mark Giordano, 37-year-old defenseman, left-handed, 6.75 cap hit. That's quite the cap hit for a very old player. The good news is it's only 1 more year of that. Whether or not Giordano comes back to play in the NHL again after this year, we don't know. If it is, it's probably going to be a 1 year deal worth, something very low, around $900,000, maybe just over $1 million. But in my mind, this is going to be Seattle's captain. He's been the captain of the Calgary Flames for quite some time. He brings a lot of good veteran voice to the locker room, leadership, presence, experience, playoff experience as well. So I think that's the best pick that they could have made out of Calgary. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that's going to be their captain moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that if for whatever reason he wasn't the captain, that would just provide another voice that isn't labeled the captain, so there wouldn't be like as much attention or pressure to it. And on top of that, like you said, even though he is very old and he has a big cap, it provides that experience. And if he does end up being the captain, then younger players on the team will see how he operates and they'll be like, wow, this guy was an inspiration. He really knows like how to speak to the guys and their different personalities and whatnot. And that could maybe, even if he does move on after this year, help some guys grow into a role where they might become a C or an A next year. And then they'll have that leadership experience and they'll know how to operate with other guys.
Exactly. And you know, like you said, even if Giordano doesn't have the C, and even if he's not a unlabeled captain, as you said, he, in my mind, there's no chance that they don't even give him an A. You know, he would definitely be an assistant captain at the very least. And like you said, for me, this, you know, 1 year deal like this, you're willing to bite the bullet on a cap hit. Yeah, always. And Giordano's a really, really, really good guy to have in the room. He's a good guy on and off the ice. Very high character, very high responsibility, leadership, all that. And as you'll notice going through the list here, Seattle went a little bit of defense heavy, and they did go, even with the forwards, they went with a lot of younger guys. There's not a lot of guys that are getting taken in this expansion draft that are over the age of 27, 26 years old. So he's going to be a big part of their development as players and professionals in the National Hockey League. Carolina, they're going with Morgan Geekie. I thought Geekie was really good in the playoffs. I believe it was 2 years ago. He really showed out against the Capitals. He's not a guy that's really going to show up in the regular season, and he's not going to do much, you know, like I said, in the regular season. But in the playoffs, he's a guy that helps you. He makes your team deeper. If you have an injury, he's an easy guy to plug into the lineup. He's definitely a good bottom six guy to have on your roster. Chicago just got the confirmed pick, so Zach doesn't even know about it yet. Who'd you say again?
So I had them taking Ryan Carpenter, but I did think there was a chance that they would take Subban.
Okay. Yeah, and I had Hinostroza, Gaudette, or Zadorov. It is none of those. It is John Quenneville, 25-year-old left winger. He is a UFA this year, so he needs a new contract. Making $750,000. I don't expect him to get much of a raise, if anything at all. I'd say 825 will probably be the most that he gets for maybe 1 or 2 years. Sorry. Next up, Colorado. I like this pick a lot for Colorado. They go with Jonas Donskoy. Former Shark. He's been a Avalanche player for 2 seasons now, I believe. 29 years old, right winger, $3.9 million. He does have 2 years left on his deal. And he's a guy that I think brings another sense of leadership to the room. He's got the playoff experience for sure, being on Colorado. He's got a lot of skill. I think that he still has a lot left in the tank. You know, and I was somebody that when he was going through free agency, I was saying, you know, oh yeah, I want Sabres go after him. You know, he'd be a good fit here because he just is a good middle six player to have on your team. He's 6 foot, 190 pounds, so he's a big guy. And in the playoffs this year, in 10 games, he had 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points. And in the regular season, 51 games played, he had 17 goals, 14 assists for 31 points. So he's definitely going to produce for you on an 82 game pace. I expect him to be somewhere around 50 points. It might dip off a little bit depending on, you know, what you're looking at for who his center is. But, you know, I could definitely see him being a big piece in the expansion draft here. Columbus Blue Jackets. They go with a prospect as well. Well, not really a prospect, I guess you could say, but a guy that hasn't really cracked the lineup that much. Gavin Bayreuther, 27-year-old defenseman, left defense, $710,000 cap hit. He is a UFA. If he walks, I don't think that Seattle will be too upset about it. If he doesn't, cool. I wouldn't expect him to be on the Kraken roster on opening night. I would definitely expect him to be an AHL guy for them. Dallas. This one is done, and the deal is done. We don't know the details of the new contract, but Jamie Oleksiak was a pending UFA. He is 28 years old, a left defenseman with a cap hit previously of 2.1375. I would expect his to be right around that area, maybe a little bit lower. I could see like a 2 or 3 year deal coming for Oleksiak. And like I said, we don't have the details on that yet, but it sounds like the contract is, done, agreed upon. Just Jamie Oleksiak needs to pick up the pen, put his signature on the paper, and it'll be all done. I think that's a good pick for him. I don't think there was anybody really, jumping off the page from Dallas other than maybe Ben Bishop. But at 34 years old, with the injury concerns that he's had and the cap hit of 4.9 with 2 more years to go, I'm not surprised that they pass on Ben Bishop at all. Detroit, we still don't know yet. That one hasn't been confirmed. Edmonton, this one is done and over with. Another UFA gets his contract and is going to be selected by Seattle. That's Adam Larson. If you remember Adam Larson for Taylor Hall 1-for-1, that's always what I think of when I hear this guy's name. $4.16 million was his previous cap hit. With his age 28, his new contract with Seattle is going to take him to 32 years old. It's a 4-year deal worth right around $4 million. So he stays about the same, a little bit of a pay cut, not much at all. LA Kings. LA Kings get a real bruiser, I guess you could call him, or very physical defenseman here in Curtis McDermott. 27 years old. He can play left or right. $875,000 cap hit. He is a UFA next year. 1 year left on his deal. Seattle is going with a very physical, big presence defense core to start their new team with. No surprises here for me, really. I thought that maybe they would look at Brennan Lemieux, maybe Ole Mata on defense, but Mata does have a big cap hit with only 1 year left, so I understand not taking him. And Jonathan Quick too. Some people were thinking that maybe they would take a chance on Jonathan Quick. I never saw that as being the case. He's 35 years old with a $5.8 million cap hit for 2 more years. Jonathan Quick has at one time was playing like one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. And now it's just to the point where it's like, Seattle would probably beg somebody to take Jonathan Quick off their hands. He's declined extremely quickly. I never saw that as happening. All right, moving on. Minnesota Wild. Minnesota goes with a younger defenseman, 26-year-old Carson Soucy, a 2.75 cap hit. He has 2 years left on his deal. He's a left defenseman. I don't know that he cracks the opening night lineup. He could. He very well could. But like I said, there's a lot of defensemen on this list right now. Not everybody's going to get a roster spot. I could see Soucy competing for that 7th spot, healthy scratch on a given night, but we'll see. There are no surprises here at all to me. The only other one that I thought they might look at would be, there's 2. Kaapo Kakinen, the goaltender, 24 years old. He's an RFA with 1 year left. He played pretty well this year for the Minnesota Wild, so I'm a little shocked that they didn't go with him. But obviously, they had other plans with goaltending. They went another route. And then Nick Bukestad, the 29-year-old centerman, with a 2.05 cap hit. He had 1 year left on his deal. It's understandable not taking him, but I did think that maybe if they want a responsible third line or second line center, Nick Bukestad would be a good guy to go with. But again, it's Carson Soucy, so that's all right. Montreal, a little bit of a surprise here. They do not go with Carey Price, which doesn't come as a surprise to some people. To me, I'm not saying anything about Ron Francis as a GM. He's an incredibly smart guy. But if it was me, I'm taking that chance on Carey Price. He's 33 years old. Yes, he has an insanely high cap hit of $10.5 million. And yes, he's under contract till 2026. So you got 5 more years of Carey Price at $10.5 million. But at the same time, if I'm Seattle and I want to be extremely competitive and I believe that I can get to the playoffs in the next year or so, Carey Price is the guy that you want on your roster. And he showed that this year with Montreal. Montreal was in the finals because of Carey Price. Now, the other thing that came with Carey Price was the news that he needs knee surgery and he's had other injury concerns and things like that. But to me, the reason I wouldn't back away from Carey Price is say he needs knee surgery, right? And he cannot play the entire NHL season. Well, he goes on LTIR. And then you free up that $10.5 million. And you have the ability to go out and get another player at that point. So for me, I think it was worth the risk. Obviously, Ron Francis and the Seattle Kraken decided against it, and it's understandable. I think that maybe if his contract went till like 2024, 2023, I think they definitely would have taken the chance there. But because of the term on it, they say no. And then the other surprises from the Montreal Canadiens, Jonathan Drouin was not taken. Thomas Tatar was not taken. Paul Byron was not taken. And Philip Deneau was not taken. It is Cale Fleury, 22-year-old prospect, defenseman, right D, $771,000 cap hit, RFA this year, so he is up for a new contract. I do like Cale Fleury. I think he's good. I think he's a decent, has the potential to be a bottom pairing defenseman in the NHL someday, and we'll see where that goes. We just had another confirmed pick too. If you want to backtrack to it.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay. This is gonna make a lot of people upset. Well, at least in our area, because it's Buffalo.
Oh baby.
And well, I'll let you guess.
Well, if it's gonna make a lot of people upset, the people that I've talked to have wanted Borgen to stay. So is it Will Borgen?
It is Will Borgen.
All right.
24 years old. He's a right defenseman. $864,000, and he is going to need a new contract. He has RFA status. I don't know if Buffalo is going to be able to get him back. But we'll see. Will Borgen to me is he's fitting for what Seattle's doing on the defense core because he's a very physical, shut down, defensive responsible guy that does not join the rush really at all. And, he stays home and he knows his job. So, that kind of stinks for Buffalo and it kind of makes, it's going to make people upset. But,
definitely a smart pick.
Yeah, it's a smart pick if you're Seattle, for sure. Where did we leave off?
I believe we were on We're on Nashville now.
Yeah. Okay. So jumping back to Nashville. Sorry about that. That's the type of thing that happens when you do a video like this on an expansion draft day and you get leaks. It's like doing a trade thing on deadline day. You're gonna have stuff that ruins it and comes up. Nashville, we don't have a confirm yet on it, but it does sound like it's gonna. We said it does sound like it's gonna be Calle Järnkrok. Not a surprise here. The only other ones that are reasonable and are not Matt Duchene or Ryan Johansson with their $8 million cap hits, which Seattle was never going to touch. Mikael Granlund, but he is UFA. They hadn't talked to him about a contract, so that one wasn't going to happen. I'm a big fan of Granlund, but he'll hit the free market, and we'll see where he goes. But the only other one I'm a little surprised they didn't take a look at would be Colton Sissons. He is younger than Järnkrok, and to me, he's a little bit of a better player, but he does have a little bit of a higher cap hit. So Calle Järnkrok it probably will be. Going to the Devils. They go with Nick Bastian. Bastian is another younger guy. He's 23 years old, right winger, RFA status. He's got 2 years left on his deal at $714,000. To me, that's a good pick. I'm a little shocked that, people are okay. Well, let me backtrack just a little bit. People are a little shocked that they didn't go with PK Subban. Why go with PK Subban 1 year of $9 million when they went with Mark Giordano? Giordano, if you wanted the captain portion in your defenseman, you weren't ever going to go with Subban and Giordano. And they both could be captains for your team, but Subban appears to be on a little bit more of a quicker decline than Mark Giordano. That's why they go with Giordano and not Subban. And really no other surprises here other than Andreas Janssen. I'm surprised they didn't take a look at it, to be honest with you. I really like Andreas Janssen. He's 26 years old, 3.4 cap hit, so it's not insane. He's pretty good offensively, but they go with Bash. So nothing you can do about it now. Islanders. You were talking about this with me a little bit before the podcast. The Islanders left a lot of good names on this list, and I'm a little shocked at their pick. I guess I could say little, but it's not a surprise. Like, the person they took's not a surprise. I'm just surprised they did take him and not someone else. So their pick is Jordan Eberle, 31 years old, right winger, under contract for 3 more years at $5.5 million. They had a lot of options on the table here. You had Josh Bailey, 31 years old, 3 more years, right winger, $5 million. Casey Cizikas, but if they do want Cizikas, they can just go after him in UFA, free agency. Travis Zajac, again, he's going to be a free agent as well. Kyle Palmieri will be a free agent as well. So I'm not shocked at those. The one I am shocked at is Thomas Hickey. Especially I keep going back and mentioning this, but the type of decor that the Kraken are building right now with very physical, stay home, bodying defensemen, I'm surprised they didn't take a look at Thomas Hickey. With 1 year left on his deal at $2.5 million and a left shot defenseman, I thought that would be a good pick, but maybe they just didn't have room for him. So they go with Eberle. I still think that's a really good pick. Honestly, it's definitely a stretch saying this, like a big stretch, but I could see Jordan Eberle potting 30 goals for the Kraken. If you surround him with the right players and you put him in the right positions, he could be one of your top players. I thought, him and Josh Bailey were 2 really interesting names being on this list. So Going to the Rangers. This one got confirmed just before we started the pod today. Colin Blackwell, the 28-year-old center. He's a UFA next year, $725,000. Not a surprise at all. Zach, you had Genther on your list of guys. That wouldn't have been a surprise to me at all either. And Barclay Goodrow was exposed, but he's already begun contract negotiations with the Rangers because he was traded to the Rangers from the Lightning, so they were allowed to talk about a contract. No other surprises for the Rangers. Going to Ottawa, a little bit of a shocker. I thought they were going to go with Chris Tierney, the center, and even maybe taking a chance on Ryan Dzingel and trying to get a contract done with him. But they don't. They go with Joey Decord, 24-year-old goaltender, $750,000 RFA status, contract up in 2 years, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him play in the AHL this year. But at the same time, I could see him getting a couple games as the backup for Seattle just to get the experience. But Joey Decord's been a guy that's been behind Matt Murray when he was traded to the Ottawa Senators, and he's been in their system for a little bit. And I think that, he developed pretty nicely. So I don't have any complaints about them taking Joey Decord here. Philadelphia, we still don't have the confirmed pick. We already went over who we thought they should take here. Pittsburgh, Brandon Tanev, 29-year-old right winger, $3.5 million. He's under contract for 4 more years. I like that pick a lot. That's your second line right winger right there. Brandon Tanev is a really good player. I don't expect a whole lot of offense out of him. He's not going to be some superstar, but he'll definitely produce for the Kraken.
Yeah, and I remember during this season, every time I would catch highlights of a Penguins game, no matter who they were facing, it always seemed like when Tanev was playing, the announcers had something good to say about him, like he was making some sort of good contribution during the game. So I think that he'll be, like you said, a decent second line forward, and he'll be able to really help out the players around him putting in that shift.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's always all over the ice. He's got good speed. He's got good offensive awareness, and I do like the way that he plays the game a lot. So I think he's a good fit for Seattle as well. San Jose, no surprises here. The only thing is I guess I can't say no surprises because Ryan Donato's on the board. He's 25 years old, a left winger at $1.9 million in RFA status this year. I almost have to wonder if Seattle had a conversation with Donato about, hey, if we selected you, would you be willing to sign with us? And I have a feeling that maybe if that conversation was had, that Donato said no, because I am a little surprised they did pass on him. Ryan Donato's a pretty good forward, and I do like him a lot. But they go with Alex True, a young prospect at 24. He's a centerman, $763,000 cap hit, RFA status. He is up this year, but no other surprises. St. Louis, this one got confirmed, and another bit of a shocker, passing on a big name. They do not go with Vladimir Tarasenko. All the concerns about the injuries with Tarasenko and, whether or not they would draft him and then eat some of his salary and flip him to another team for picks or players, won't be happening. And then this morning as well, before it was confirmed that Tarasenko would not be their pick, excuse me, Jaden Schwartz was one that they were talking to. He's UFA this year. And I guess they couldn't get a contract done. So they decided to go with another player. They go with Vince Dunn, 24-year-old defenseman. He can play left or right, making $1.875 with RFA status. He is in need of a new contract this year. So even if they don't decide to keep Dunn around, they can trade him and flip him for pick, prospect, whatever. Tampa Bay, we've already discussed the whole Gord situation. It hasn't been confirmed yet, to my knowledge. Let me just double check and make sure. But like I said, I don't think that anything with him got confirmed. No, it did not. Okay. Toronto. Jared McCann. And I'm a little surprised about this because Zach, you and I were talking yesterday. There was a video that got leaked of Kevin Weeks from the NHL Network at a fish market in Seattle. They were making like a little promotional video, probably that they were going to try and play at the expansion draft. But it was, a fisherman catching a fish. He catches it, looks at Weeksy, and then he goes, Alex Kerfoot. And I'm really surprised they didn't go with Alex Kerfoot because, I liked Kerfoot ever since he was on the Avalanche. I think that he's a really offensively gifted player. He plays smart. He doesn't put himself in any type of bad situation. He really doesn't take dumb penalties. I think he's pretty gifted, but they decided to go with Jared McCann, who has our face says and is up in 1 year, is a left winger and makes $2.94 million. The only thing about Jared McCann is his analytics are off the charts. And I think that's kind of what tipped the scale in selecting him. Every analytical thing you look at about Jared McCann is really good. And, Kerfoot has good, but he also has bad. So I think that that's, like I said, that tipped the scale towards Jared McCann. But no other surprises here as far as selection from Toronto goes. Vancouver and Washington, we told you, have not been confirmed yet. We're just waiting on them. And Winnipeg, they go with Mason Appleton. No surprises there, I guess. I could have seen Lauren Brossoit being somebody that they at least talked about a contract extension with before maybe considering picking him in the expansion draft, but they didn't even get to that point with Brossoit. So I'm assuming that either he's going to remain in Winnipeg or he's got another contract or destination in his mind. Paul Stastny was not going to get picked. He's a free agent this year. Perreault was not going to get picked. The only other one that's kind of a surprise would be Dylan DeMello, the right defenseman. He's 28 years old, making $3 million for the next 3 years. I think that that's, decent. But again, they're pretty heavy on defense already. They don't need Dylan DeMello. So, and that'll do it for the expansion draft. Vegas is exempt because of how new they are. And we're just waiting now on 4 teams for their confirmed picks. That's Detroit, Philadelphia, Vancouver, Washington. I would be surprised if we don't get those confirmed picks before the expansion draft tonight. Maybe we won't, but I highly doubt it at this point. We've already gotten 26 of these picks confirmed. So that's it, Zach, if you got anything else.
No, I mean, I'll just be keeping my eye on some other reports that come through. I mean, I've been looking now on the Score. They've been slowly updating their articles with some of the deals that have been getting confirmed and some of the shocks of players getting passed up on. But other than that, nothing too much more to add.
Right. And is there anybody on a team right now that you could see getting traded to Seattle? And you know what, for the sake of this, we're going to just assume that their second overall pick is off limits. I really don't think that Seattle is going to give up their second overall in their first year ever, unless it's, a stellar package. I'm talking like, Nathan McKinnon going to Seattle and they give up their second overall and, the future first. But if you have any type of deal that maybe you were like, oh, you know what, I could see this guy going to Seattle.
Let me look through the list of teams here real quick. I mean, you definitely have a lot more knowledge on something like this than I would, but
I mean, with how many teams there are, it's hard to, it's hard for me to say right now without knowing. I mean, we know their roster now, but
right.
They don't have any prospects to trade really.
Right.
And they're going to be really weary of dealing out draft picks. More likely than not, I think they'll trade guys that maybe they take in this expansion draft that are bubble guys. They could play in the NHL, could play in the AHL, trade them to another team that needs playoff depth and be like, hey, give us a third round pick for them. Okay. All right. Done deal. But as far as, I don't see any big names going from one team to Seattle because they just don't have the assets to make that trade right now.
Yeah,
but I definitely think there's going to be side deals for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. One thing I'm a little shocked by is, like you said, a lot of the big names that we thought might get picked by Seattle were passed up on. If they wanted to maybe try and acquire some young good prospects that could grow in the next couple of years, you would have thought that maybe they would have taken some of those bigger names. Maybe not necessarily just because a lot of the bigger names are older, they're 30 and above, a lot of them. But you would have thought maybe they would have taken those bigger name players and said, okay, well, these guys probably don't have too much longer left unless they regress slowly. Their cap hit's kind of big. Maybe we'll just take them and then try and trade them away for prospects or something like that. And it seems you didn't really see that too much, judging by a lot of the leaked picks that we've seen so far.
Exactly. And, I kind of expected that. I think that a lot of the bigger names was just smoke and mirrors. And it was teams, saying, right now, if you expose a name like Carey Price and Vladimir Tarasenko, you're not trying to give up a player like that for free.
Right.
No GM in the NHL is trying to give up a good player like that for free. They would obviously much rather trade it. But you know what? At this point, what that tells me is, okay, maybe the Blues for sure. I don't know what the situation is with Carey Price and Montreal and the relationship there. But I do know that the Blues and Tarasenko have a bad relationship right now. Tarasenko wants out. He's only got 4 teams that he wants to be traded to. And, I'm sure Doug Armstrong has had conversations around the league about what the price for Vladimir Tarasenko would be. And I'm sure because he's been hurt and because he's a little bit older and he's got a high cap hit, it's not the best return. Right. So why not expose a guy like that when you know that you're either going to deal him or you're going to lose him in the expansion draft, and you free yourself up to protect somebody else in your protection list. And then at the same time, you're just playing a giant game of chicken with Seattle. You're like, hey, look, Vladimir, dangling in front. Vladimir Tarasenko, take him. Take the $7.5 million. I don't care.
Yeah. And that's something I realized too, especially like kind of with the Islanders, how I was saying there's a lot of good players on their list exposed. I think a lot of teams had it in their interest that they were purposely going to expose a lot of good players because they knew that either Seattle wouldn't take the chance on them or, well, Seattle can only take one player. They can't take everybody. So losing one guy might not even be the worst decision anyways.
Well, exactly. And that's where teams, I think, because, expansion teams really don't happen a lot. And when they do, they're usually spread out.
Right.
And, this is the first time in our lifetime that we've seen one in Vegas, and now we've seen a second one in Seattle. And they're, Seattle Vegas came to the league in 2018. This is only 3 years later.
Right.
So all these teams that went through one expansion draft with Vegas, that maybe their roster isn't the same, but their front office has at least some of the people that were around. And even if they don't, they were, say a GM of one team was with another team as an assistant. Well, they were still part of that expansion process. So they're a little bit more well prepared.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the experience now. They know what an expansion team is going to be thinking when going through this draft, right? And for me, that's like the case of Buffalo and Jeff Skinner. You have guys on your team that you said good players, right? You're talking about like guys like Everly.
Right.
Well, I think Everly's still a good player. He's definitely not anywhere what he used to be, right? And in Buffalo's case, you got Jeff Skinner. Skinner pots 40 goals and then he falls off the wagon, and I think he can get back to somewhat of a decent form still. But you know what? It hasn't been working out here. And you got three young guys in Bjork, Thompson, and Asplund that you want to protect from Seattle, and you don't want to give up a third-round pick to protect them or a second-round pick. And you go to Jeff and you say, Jeff, you're making $9 million. You have 6 more years left on your deal. There's a 99% chance that Seattle is not going to take you. So do you want to do us a favor? You're going to be a Buffalo Sabre. Expose yourself in the list, waive your no move clause, and that'll allow us to keep somebody else on this team. And that's where I think a lot of teams got smarter, because you did see, I think there were 5 players this year with no move clauses that waived them. I think there was only 2 in the Vegas draft that exposed their no move clause. And like you said, you saw a lot more teams expose players with high cap hits. And I think that's where teams got a little bit smarter. They were, back when Vegas was in, they looked at their players and they go, okay, he's got 6 million, 8 million, 7 million. These guys with the high numbers are good players. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes you sign a guy to a big deal because he had 1 or 2 good years and then they fall off. Well, now you're stuck with that contract. Why not expose it?
Right.
Why not, let that team take that money for free? You don't have to give up a pick to get him off your books, or a prospect, or another piece. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, the only other thing I'll say is they can't announce any trades with Seattle until tonight.
Okay.
I don't know if that's during the expansion draft. I think it is. I don't think they have to wait till it's over. I think they can announce trades during.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised to see. I don't think it's going to be a lot, but I think there are going to be a couple side deals.
Okay.
So you see, like, I don't know. Let me look at this list here. It's hard for me to say, Giordano. I don't think Calgary wanted Giordano anymore. I think they were, totally comfortable losing him, right? But he's got that high cap hit. I wouldn't be surprised to see Calgary, at the draft tonight. Oh, they enticed Seattle to take Giordano, even though they wanted to. They enticed them to take him by throwing him a 4th-round pick and another prospect. I wouldn't be surprised to see stuff like that.
Right.
So it should be interesting. Let me just check the list one more time, make sure we have no more confirmed picks before we're done.
Alrighty. While you're looking at that, I want to go back to your other question on, do you think any players are going to be traded or anything like that? So one player, I was kind of looking at his article this morning. It looks like Deneau is going to move on from Montreal, most likely. I feel like he could be a somewhat decent pickup for Seattle if that is the case and they do want to move forward and go get him. I'm looking at his numbers throughout the last few seasons. I mean, this season wasn't the best. He had 5 goals, 19 assists in 53 games. But I mean, it looks like with the right people around him, he can get you at least 10 to 15 goals. But he does assist a lot. So he does like to provide for players. So, I mean, if they're looking for somebody to provide that assisting ability for other players that they obtain that they know can score from their previous teams, then I think that could be a decent pickup. I don't know exactly where he would fit in, maybe like third line, but I mean, I feel like
to be completely honest with you, I wouldn't be shocked to see if they do make a trade for Phil Deneau. I could see him being the second liner. His numbers don't reflect it, but he plays a really, really, really good game. He's just smart all around, and he jumps off the page analytically too. So I could definitely see him being a guy as well. So
yeah, that was one guy I was looking at. But other than that, not too knowledgeable on situations, so I'd have to wait and see what else develops throughout the rest of the day.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like I said, there's 31 teams in this league. It's hard to remember, what's going on with who in their contract situations and all this and that. So, I can't give you any off the top of my head right now. I would literally have to sit here and stare at the rosters of all the teams just to get a refresher, because it's been a long off season so far for me. But yeah, I don't have any trades right now that I could think of. So.
All right. Well, if we have nothing else to talk about, then we'll just be keeping track and keeping tabs on teams that have not been confirmed yet throughout the day to see what's going on. Hopefully, we'll be able to get maybe another episode out before the season ends. I know personally for me, I would like to keep the episodes going. It's unfortunate that a lot of the main guys got really busy over the summer, and I don't know if they just lost motivation or anything, but I definitely want to keep episodes going, whether it's by myself or Matt comes back or Zach and Nick even, or with whoever. But I'd love to keep the episodes going. But other than that, you can follow us on our socials. My Instagram personally is at ZNG711. Matt's is at RaddyPack5, I believe.
Yeah.
And then the podcast Instagram is I think it's just KQC Podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe so.
KQC Podcast. It's one of the two. I mean, we both follow it, so you could find it through our follow list.
And the other thing is too, I myself, pretty busy, just like Zach said. And I also can't do a lot of episodes on some stuff. I do like doing this stuff with talking about special events like Seattle Expansion Draft, but I'm pretty much their hockey trades and prospect guy. So I cover a lot of that stuff. Me and Zach discussed we're hoping to maybe do an episode this Thursday before the entry draft on Friday. Round 1 is Friday night, and then rounds 2 through 7 are Saturday afternoon. And our team, the Sabres, own the number 1 overall pick. Seattle has 2, and there's a lot to unpack and discuss about the entry draft. So we're hoping we can get that episode done Thursday afternoon and get that out by Thursday night. But keep an eye on the page to see if that gets done.
Alrighty. So with that, then we will conclude the episode. All episodes I usually try and upload straight after it's done recording. So I mean, nobody's watching this live right now, but if you were, this would probably be uploaded within the next few hours. So thanks everyone who views this.
Yeah, it's 2:00 now. We hope to have it up by about 5 before the actual expansion draft.
Yeah. So just look on the YouTube page for that then. As always, every episode goes up there. For anyone that watches this on YouTube, thank you very much for watching. Like I said, we'll be hoping to get a lot more content out, hopefully within the next few months. And as always, thanks for the support.